eventually you get absorbed in and you are Sonic.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to No Repeat. It's a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week with no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion life throws at you. I'm Taylor Olmstead, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Tyler Reed.
I was just informed that there was a NASCAR race called the Dude Wipes 250, and I no longer know joy. So yeah.
And Sean Evans.
If you were going to the beach for purity, it's time to pay the price.
We're not really talking about either of those things today, or are we? Tyler, what was our challenge this week?
Yeah, folks, this week we are challenged to find the perfect song for the moment you realized you effed up. And if you want to submit your own challenge, we're recording our Patreon-only podcast where we pick our challenges next week. So you should get them in, either join our Discord, or just send us an email. norepeatpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much.
This is normally where I ask some kind of general question to begin our discussion. But I feel like the only real question that I can ask here is, when is the last time you effed up?
I specifically can remember this because it was recent. My boss had just left work, and he was basically going across town at that point, right? And so I was going to go step outside. I was going to go grab some food real quick across the street. And so just sort of like in a hurry, I locked the front door. Then we have like a second door to go out that locks behind us. And so I literally just didn't grab like my bag that had my keys in it because I was like, oh, I'll just do it really quick. And I just ran out that door, and I was like, I have absolutely no way of getting back inside this building. And so I texted like a coworker who lived in the area, and he's like, I'm out of town. And he's like, you can like check like our realty place, like our like whoever like owns like the buildings. And I was just like, okay, so I like went up into their office. I like walked it. I like went down like a block, and I went inside there. Went up to the third floor. I was like, "Hey, so I got like locked out of my building. Can you like let me in?" They're like, "Oh yeah, no problem." But for like, there was a real fight or flight moment. I was like, I'm gonna have to call this man who's gonna have to drive 20 to 30 minutes over, who just left, who said he had to go do something. And I mean, sure, I didn't actually F up, at the end of days, but like, I was pretty frazzled from the experience.
Sean, when's the last time you effed up?
Oh, I need another minute to think about it, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, right?
So, my health insurance changed over at the beginning of the year and changed providers completely. So, some of my billing got real wonky, and I had this problem with the bill from my psychiatrist where they never sent me the initial bill, and then they sent a reminder through, like, it wasn't collections, but it's like the step before collections, And they sent this email, and they were like, hey, you owe $350. And I was like, whoa, all right. So I went in and paid it. Couple weeks pass. My account on the psychiatrist's website says, you still owe $600. And I was like, did I just get identity thefted? What just happened? And I try to like make just a small payment on their website to see if it goes through, and I can't get it to work. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna call these people. I'm gonna figure it out. So I call the people, spend an hour on hold with them. I'm frazzled. I'm like trying to answer emails for work while I'm on hold. I'm doing all this stuff. Finally get somebody on the phone, talk to her. She's like, oh yeah, that's our third party processing people. You didn't get scammed. It can take up to 90 days.
Oh, bullshit.
For us to see that payment. And I was like, well, I need to pay down my balance because I have another appointment coming up. and you guys keep telling me that I need to pay my balance to have appointments. She's like, oh, okay, well, send me the reference number, and then you can pay the other remainder of your balance through our website this time, and it'll go through immediately. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to do it with you while I'm on the phone with you, because this whole process has already been too much. So I finally get their payment form to work. It's very confusing and badly designed. Go through, hit the button. There's no confirm step. There's just submit. I hit submit. I pay the entire $600 balance, even though I've already paid $350 of it. And audibly on the phone with this woman, I'm like, oh, shit. And she's like, sir? She's like concerned I've like fallen into a ditch or something. I'm like, you could refund this payment, right?
Yeah.
She's like, the payment you just made? I'm like, yes. I need you to refund this payment right now. 3 weeks and multiple refunds later, I'm proud to say I no longer have a balance at the psychiatrist. We figured it out. But that moment where I inadvertently put $900 worth of medical bills on my credit card when I only had a $600 balance, that was not a good day.
Oh, so the other day, last Monday, Sarah and I were riding our bikes on my lunch break and we're like coming by, and I'm like going into one of the towns close to us. They had the road closed off, they're doing construction. And like, so we're riding like side by side, which is legal in a lot of places, regardless of what anybody wants to tell you. I'm not upset about this. These like assholes in this big truck like see Sarah out there and they just start blasting their horn at him. So instinctually I just just gave him the bird, like double down, realizing as they're driving by, they're in a truck that's the cab is over my head on the bike, and like there's probably 3 of them in there, and I was just like, you, like blah blah blah, fucking just letting them have it. Immediately as they get behind me, I remember that at the end of this road, it's closed, and they are going to have to turn around. And we are about a quarter mile from the nearest place where we are not stuck between a hillside and a guardrail that goes down to the river. And I just thought to myself, and I told Sarah, no matter what happens, just get out your phone. Just start recording whatever happens. Just get out your phone and start taping. I was like, and we made it like away from them. I didn't see him after that. But for that, like 2 minutes where I was like, we need to go. Like we need to start hauling to get up to that street. I was like, man, I f***ed up. Like I really felt like I had done it. It's embarrassing.
These things happen in life. And I was glad when this challenge came in, because it's not a challenge about messing something up. It's a challenge about you've already done a thing.
Oh yeah, it's over.
And now you realize that you've messed up.
The ketchup is out. The ketchup is out of the bottle, guys. It ain't going back in.
Yeah. And that is a wholly different kind of song pick. So how did you guys go about looking for a song for that?
I really tried to find a song that was as if you were on a Netflix or Hulu show, and that moment immediately after you f*** up is the credits. Like you can see the reaction in your face, and then it kind of closes out under the credits. So the next episode will start with you having to figure your way out of this one, circa like Better Call Saul or something. That was what I did.
I like that approach. That's good. Tyler, what were you up to?
I think it's a little bit about a vibe. I think what I was intentionally trying to do is, I feel like the last time, like I was trying not to make this be a pick similar to when you find out the last boss is a dance battle. I feel like I could have chosen a song from that playlist that I had sort of crafted, because it was sort of like the idea of like sort of like a confrontation or like a conflict that has a sort of like tension to it. And so really I kind of was looking for something that was kind of like not necessarily dancey or electronic. I kind of wanted something that just sort of like had like a build, suspense, and release, and something I feel like that just kind of like went hard, sort of like a like probably what you would say like for like a car chase or like a music video or something that's like a very action orientated one, or like something I feel like really sort of like conveys the energy of sort of like your mind space, kind of like when you're like your fight or flight is activated, so I guess I was feeling I was in it like a more confrontational sort of like shonen anime Dragon Ball Z battle space, but try not to sort of like rehash it. So I think that's kind of like where it kind of ended up going, and I felt like if the song sort of like fit that, like at least in terms of its vibe, but then also had like lyrics that I felt like worked, I feel like that was like fine too. I feel like it's more about like sort of like the moment, right? There has to be like, I feel like I was really good for like a tangible moment that I feel like really that was very prescriptive of this situation.
That's kind of where I was at as well. I was like thinking about that moment, like when like Sean said, like the credits hit kind of thing. I was in a little bit more of a headspace than Tyler's like vibe space, I think, which is pretty common. Like I'm usually the more lyric centric person, I think, but I really wanted something that was like talking about that moment of realization, because there are lots of songs about like feeling bad about yourself or feeling dumb for doing something stupid, but I wanted something that was like the kind of like scales falling from your eyes moment, so to speak. Who wants to go first?
I'll just roll with this since I was the first to talk this week.
All right, Sean, what you got?
This week I chose S on Your Chest by Injury Reserve.
Had an S on his chest, it's the Muppets. I can't wait till I can get to stunting. Get a Tesla, take it to West Coast Customs. It's nothing. Me and my niggas get it jumping. They asking for a brother at the door like Lauren London in front. We've been on something. They just hella mad cause the kid been buzzing. What you know about a young nigga like this, yo? What you know about a young neighbor like this, yo? I did the second one for the white kids, cause I know you wanna say it, but that ain't right, kid, yo. This that Equemini plus a Pisces.
I think I found this song a couple weeks ago when I was driving. Man, I don't remember what I was listening to. Probably Vince Staples. And then I just put it on radio because I was like, find me something that sounds like Vince Staples. And this came up, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I liked the saxophone parts in it and all the different parts of it and the voices and everything like that. I really haven't had much time to look into the lyrics all that much. I just appreciate the vibe that it has. It sounds weird to say that I haven't paid attention to the vocals in a rap song because it's...
Just want to stop you right there and say that you had a positive reaction to the saxophone.
I did. Slowly, this podcast has broken me. Mm-hmm.
Growth.
Yeah. Or just apathy, probably, or acquiescence, probably. It's one of those things. But yeah, so kind of what I was saying, when this would be kind of the out credit after one has realized that they have effed up. It's similar to like, I feel like there would be some clips in Atlanta that would kind of have this similar vibe to this, where something happens and it kind of like the camera pans off to something and then this kind of fades in quickly to the credits and you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? I just like the cinematic vibe that this kind of had. It felt very nice and felt of a mood to that. So that's why I picked it.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel the like TV end credits moment energy here for sure. The beat is fun. It's got that cool saxophone loop, like the multi-layered percussion. I think there's a lot of cool like syncopation going on in there. It's just refreshing to hear a beat that doesn't rely on like the standard trap patterns, and this is like pretty far outside of that, which is nice. I don't know a ton about Injury Reserve. I know that they lost one of their members in 2023, and the surviving members have since gotten back together under a different name. But this makes me really want to check them out because I feel like they all have really great flow. They have good chemistry between the three of them. Like, it doesn't feel like three MCs like doing their own thing. Like, this feels like a track that's put together in a way that showcases all of them as a group, which is cool. Also, I feel like the hook kind of fits the challenge a little bit, where there's this bit about the first time he says the line, he uses the N-word, and the second time he says neighbor, and then he says, I made that second one for the white kids. And like, yeah, that's a good moment you realize you effed up. You don't want to be that person at the show. Maybe just mouth the lyrics for all of us pasty-faced friends. Or just nod your head. Just vibe. Just vibe. Yeah. It's a good one. It's a cool pick.
So this song is like, in terms of like, so I'm, you know, it's no secret that I'm kind of like on the outside of on the rap spectrum, but this is like pretty purely like in like my lane, because it's like a little like trip hop, a little like jazz rap sort of kind of vibe, and I'm like, you know, those. And that's usually the kind of style I'm good with. That's usually the kind that I like. So like this was really cool, and I feel like I've heard a lot of really good things about Injury Reserve in the past. I feel like they usually get pretty good reviews. So it's like Taylor. This makes me really want to check them out. But I will say that the worst part is the last one who has the last like sort of like set of bars that has the sort of like they're like the chipmunked up one, and I'm like for some reason the yeah.
Go ahead and say it with it, yeah. Now I need a vest just in case the pig spraying at it, yeah. You all need a vest just in case they spraying at it, yeah. Real niggas multiply, yeah, that's the saying, ain't it, yeah. Ride around in the windows tinted, yeah, we breaking necks.
Really just agitates me in a really specific way. I'm like, oh, I don't want to. Oh, but very cool track. I'm into it. You know, I feel like when I first heard this though, I was kind of like, does this fit with the challenge? But I realized that this isn't necessarily, not every way of expressing conflict or inner turmoil or sort of like, you know, some level of self-reflection has to be a sort of like chaotic or dark moment. It can sort of be like, or it can at least be expressed outwardly, not in that way, right? I feel like I sort of was like, really was wanting to express that sort of like frustration or like sort of like that darkness of it, and I feel like this is sort of like a song that is played over top of what's happening to this person to create an aesthetic, to create like a vibe. It's like a cinematic approach to it, and I think that totally fits sort of like in with like sort of like the more cinematic sort of like style that you're kind of looking for, where he said it's like kind of like the end of an episode kind of vibe, because those are usually, it's like, oh, like a really well-placed one of those, like regardless of the context of the situation. Usually they kind of go for more of like a banger. Like it doesn't necessarily always have to reflect one-to-one of it, but it just needs to have like that hook or that catch, something to it that really like sells it. And I feel like this does that. I would be curious as to like which part you would clip for that, but I feel like it has a good vibe, but I'm kind of like, well, does it have like the exact like moment that I'd be trying to like clip? But I don't know. I think it's good. I think I mean this is definitely putting them on my list of artists to check out for sure.
All right, Tyler, bring us your song. What you got?
This week I chose Cochise by Audioslave. after sort of like behind the scenes talk of Taylor being like, you know what, Audioslave, not as bad as I remember. And I'm like, if I get 2 out of 3, that's good enough. And hopefully this is gonna win Sean over because it's got that wacky Rage Against the Machine Tom Morello guitar on it. So it's like I feel like it can play. I feel like it plays. But I've always been a fan. Anyway, so I picked a song. I've kind of been into Audioslave, you know, not everything all the time, and I realized that it kind of is like a sound that almost at this point, I feel like it feels more novel than it did kind of when it came out. When I feel like we were kind of going through like new metal and stuff, and it's like this, you know, is this really kind of working the way I want to? Does this just feel like kind of like a hard rock kind of vibe? And it's like it didn't really feel like it played the way I wanted it to. But I feel like in 2024. It's like, you know, we're really, and we were pouring one out for Chris Cornell, right? First of all. And then I feel like I really can appreciate sort of like the repetitious nature of sort of like the beat / composition of the song, where it's like, it's very much relying on that sort of that Tom Morello, like really strong guitar line. And I feel like that's really kind of like what sells the song for me and kind of sells Audioslave as a group, is I feel like it has that Rage influence combined with Chris Cornell's voice. So it's like, I think it's definitely a band that I feel like upon reflection, kind of revisiting in current year, is like, yes, I think there's something interesting and specific about this band was doing that I feel like we don't necessarily have in today's era, especially with these Titans performing on it. But yeah, I mean, so I feel like what made me choose the song in particular is that I feel like the lead up to the start of this song is like a moment of like tension, and then I feel like there's a good sort of like almost immediate breakdown at the start of the song, and you're like, well, damn, that's a good way to start an album, you know? Like that's like it feels powerful, it feels good, you know? Like it's not even kind of in like the metal way. I feel like it's like a breakdown, but doesn't feel like overly intense in like the way that I feel like a black metal or like a grindcore would feel in some ways. You know, feels very approachable in that way, an approachable breakdown. And so this song in particular is sort of about like depression and sort of like getting yourself like trying to help yourself, trying to improve your life, and so like try to wait despite everything that's kind of like working against you, or kind of like you're kind of like working against yourself. Sort of like almost having a conversation within yourself. And so I feel like that can like be some level of like f***ing up, where, you know, you're sort of working on addiction, or you have some sort of problems you're kind of dealing with, or depression. I feel like those all can like apply, but, you know, I feel like it kind of does almost have like a pull yourself by your bootstraps mentality, which in that, if you look at it in that way, kind of sucks. But I feel like it plays in the part where, and at the very least in the composition, I feel like has a good intensity to it. I feel like it has a good lead up and then breakdown, and I feel like that really is a good sort of like cinematic moment for capturing the moment you f***ed up.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's Audioslave. Like, it's hard to, you're gonna like it or you're not, right? I think it's hard rock of a particular era. It has the sound of that. Chris Cornell's vocal here is very like almost AC/DC-esque, which is an interesting sound. You know, I mean, a younger me would have definitely bounced right off of this. But between our Rick Rubin episode and just being exposed to more heavier sounds from you guys in the course of making the show, I really like this. I really like like you said, that unison riff. I feel like really drives it forward, really gives it a sense of purpose. You know, you can tell that, I mean, the rhythm section and on this is the same as Rage Against the Machine. Like, you could tell they've been playing together for years. It's just lockstep. It's so good. And you really, like, you feel this like building sense of anticipation throughout it up to the choruses, which is something that this genre I think always did really well. This kind of like hard rock / new metal, if you want to call it that, although I would argue that in this case. But like it was really cinematic, and Audioslave in particular was very good at like building up to just choruses that'll blow the doors off. And yeah, I mean, lyrically being about, you know, kind of depression and codependence and all these things, like it's also it fits in. Tragic given what happened with Chris Cornell, but you know, it's a good one. I think it fits the challenge well.
There's lots of interesting like tones on this that have urgency and fear in them, which sounds weird to think about, but I want to like point out the entire bridge kind of having this like wah sound to it is interesting, on top of Chris Cornell's kind of like screaming vocals coming out of that, where the guitar riff comes back in, that you have all these layers that build up into something that has a lot of panic energy, that kind of has a panic on it more so than Rage Against the Machine having an anger bend for it. And this is like right off the bat. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. Like, and maybe I'm just contextualizing this because there's just like, they're clearly on a huge pile of scaffolding and flash pots are going on everywhere. But I think there is kind of a feeling like this does play well with the idea that something has gone really wrong. Lyrically, like Taylor alluded to it, something has gone wrong. But I think if you just had this on in the background, I could see this being on like a getaway scene in like Sons of Anarchy or Mayans or something. It does have a very Motorcycle Gang-y vibe to it. And a lot of those narratives are about being in trouble or getting in trouble or being in trouble or something, you know, or rebellion or something, and the element of trouble that comes with that. So, no, I completely think this plays. I don't know if this is the first Audio Slave song that will be on the playlist, but it's cool if it is.
I think it is.
It's cool that it's this one, because I feel like I have not heard this song before, at least consciously, and it's cool. There's a lot happening here.
Well, speaking of bands that somehow have not made it onto this show in almost 500 episodes, my pick is Everybody Dies by Superchunk. Superchunk's one of those bands that has always been in my periphery. You know, they've been active since 1989. They're kind of late college rock, early like 90s grungy alternative stuff. And I just like, I never really latched on. Like, I didn't really avoid them, but I just never really had an excuse to like deep dive into their discography. And I still haven't, but the algorithm recommended this new single of theirs from their most recent record. And I mean, it sounds like a band that started yesterday. Like, this does not sound like a band that has been playing together since 1989. Not to say that it's like amateurish. It has a freshness, it has a directness to it that is really cool and fun and like reminds me why I like punk rock. And lyrically, I think it fits the challenge really well because it talks about like, I'll just read the chorus because I feel like it captures what I'm getting at. It says, "I was happy in a world of wishful thinking and outright lies, but I'm beginning to think everybody dies." And there are like these different vignettes in the verses that kind of follow that concept, but it's really just about like those moments where you get a glimpse of the void and realize everybody does die. And like, what a great song for realizing that you messed up. you have this moment where like, oh damn, what if this is the last thing I ever do? Right? You don't want this to be written down on the piece of paper when they wheel you into the ICU. Like, I just think as we get older, you know, maybe less likely to skateboard off a roof or some other nonsense that might end up being, you know, the reason you're in a full body cast. But when you realize that you fucked up, you got to reckon with that void. Everybody is going to die.
There's something about a band like this where, you know, I pee-poo on Blink-182 all the time. About like being like 40-something-year-old dudes and still writing the same kind of songs. But it's like, at the same time, there's like bands like Superchunk and a lot, frankly, most pop punk adjacent bands are probably like 40-year-old dudes writing about the same stuff they did when they were 20. I think what's interesting is that there's something about like sort of like the boyish quality of the vocals that feel like the sort of like the more nasally sort of sound that makes them just sort of like kind of just make them feel like a nerd like all the time, and it feels like it doesn't feel like they've aged in that way, right? Like some people just naturally have a voice that kind of sounds like that, and so I feel like in some ways that kind of like plays, whereas like I don't know, well maybe it's because
I feel that. I feel that way when I listen to like Descendants, for example.
Yeah.
A similar kind of like nerdy punk band that like, yeah, there's something in the vocal quality, something in the subject matter that separates it a little bit.
Yeah. And maybe in some ways, like, there's a difference between, I guess in some ways it's like, not to make this about Blink, but it's like, it feels like they're just doing the same sorts of songs, but with new production, and that production is bad and I don't like it. Whereas this is like, they're singing it sort of like probably tweaked songs with lyrical content that's a little bit more approachable and sort of always kind of has been like a little like, political adjacent, you know? And so it's never changed because it's kind of always been about the same kind of thing that sort of like doesn't really change as you get older. That being said, wild that this came out this year, like you said, it is interesting that this feels like it's out of space, out of time in a way. Like it feels like, just feels like crafted in such a like a way. It's like, is this like a 10 out of 10 song for me? Like, no, but it's it's solid, it's good, and it feels like it knows exactly what it's trying to do. It stays exactly in its lane, and it's good. But, I mean, I also think it is fun in regards to challenge, because I feel like I don't like the implications that the moment you f*** it up is that also that you're dead. Is that you're falling off of a building and now you are. It's like it's a little cheery for like, oh, guess I'm dying, you know, or it's like you're like, well, you know, like everybody dies, but you're like 80 on your deathbed, and you're like, no, oh wait, this is a wildly inappropriate song for that. But I mean, if we take it in the least serious scenario where it's like, oh, you know, you were on your skateboard, you were just doing some tricks in the behind the speedway, and you snapped your arm or whatever. You're like, yeah, perfect.
Oh,
you know what? I did fuck up. I did. And you know what? I would want to be listening to Supertruck. Everybody dies when that happens.
Just the fact that you guys both took this to like a level of like personal injury is just like, oh, too much for me.
Right.
I was just a bad life decision, not like riding a snowmobile and, you know, taking off your arm. I just feel like really off-put right now thinking about all this stuff.
It's like it's a little intense. It's a little strong.
Yeah.
Listen, we're more fragile than we used to be.
Yeah.
No, that's true. No one here is saying that that's not the case. I don't know. Maybe a comment at how on the nose this one is. I don't mind the song. I think it kind of reminds me, like, okay, let's say alternate reality. close your eyes for a second and imagine with me that Weezer was really hard.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it reminds me of. Not in a bad way. I just thought like, this is a really weird Weezer song.
Like Weezer kept its street cred.
Yeah.
And they
like Weezer didn't give up. They're like, they're like, you know, like when the Muppets called and Weezer said like, we'll do a video with you. If they were like, nah, not doing that. Sorry, Jim Henson. Love you, but we're not gonna do that. We're doing a collab with Jinko jeans and Etney skateboard shoes. I mean, yeah.
Wow.
Pretty much.
It has that vibe in that way, and I don't know. Did this come like 2 decades too late for Jackass?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
More or less.
I feel like though, the thing that I want to give Superchunk credit for is like, this is never, as far as I know, and I don't know a ton, but this isn't the kind of band that like was ever trying to be anything else.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like indie rock folks from North Carolina playing in their band, running a surprisingly successful record label. They could have easily stopped doing Superchunk and just run Merge Records, which, for those who don't know, Merge was created by 2 members of Superchunk and has released albums from Arcade Fire and Neutral Milk Hotel and Spoon and She and Him. Like, some of the most important indie records of the last 20 years came out on Merge. They could have just done that, right? But they're like, no, we're going to keep doing Superchunk. And we're just going to, like, make fun indie rock records. And I admire that.
I see it. I'm here for it. I appreciate it. Okay. Well, with that, it's time for listener submissions. And these are things that I get to talk about every week, where I get to say your handles online and mess them up royally, and then talk about songs that you... Actually, I kind of know some of them this week. So, all right. So, here it goes. Is 273 alt title. At 71 DPI picked Corona by the Minutemen.
I mean, yeah, it's the Jackass theme song.
Oh, see, I didn't even read that before I said that thing. I didn't realize that was the Minutemen, but that's funny.
Quintessential choice for this challenge.
Rory Snake picked Against All Odds by Phil Collins.
Was not expecting Phil Collins on this one, but okay, sure. Let's go.
All right, and then Angry Tetris, Mr. Brightside by The Killers, which I do know, and there's a comment here, which is, I started out a kiss, how could it end up like this?
Oh, yeah.
That was it.
That's really, that is the moment.
And we have some prior episode feedback. If you want to give us some prior episode feedback, you can always do that as well. But Bugsby Sheep said, my answer to the hardware store question was Phil Collins, but I liked your snowboard menu song. Drum and bass needs more representation.
We can do more drum and bass on this show. I'm into that.
Drum and bass.
I'm not saying no.
Do a specific drum and bass challenge?
We could. That'd be fun. We haven't done a genre in a bit.
Is this how we're going to choose our next...
Add it to the list now, guys.
Oh,
thanks a lot.
Oh, good golly, Miss Molly. Okay, all right.
It's happening now. You signed up, so here we are. I do have a colleague at work that he knows that I do this podcast, and I think he subscribes. So JP, if you're listening to this, thank you. But he shamelessly like pimps our show during staff meetings.
I love that.
Every time I go off the microphone, he's like, "Yep, check out his pod." Or he's asking about it. He's constantly like, he's very good at submitting challenges. Well, I keep telling him submit challenges, and I feel like I haven't seen one yet. So JP, get on it. Well, with that, speaking of things to get on with, our B-sides, ones that were not really fucked up enough to get on here. But do you have some?
Yeah, I had War by Waxahachie. Not that one. Song. It's a song about being at war with yourself.
Oh.
Am I the Menace by The Dirty Nil, a band I literally discovered today and know nothing about. And then I was kind of in a Sean space. I had A Forsaken Lover's Plea by Chuck Strangers, which is like a cool Notorious B.I.G. style, like East Coast hip hop. Like it's a jam.
Salt in the Wounds by Pendulum.
You went really rock and roll on this one, didn't you?
I really did. I haven't been
most
a little bit
butch Tyler has been in months.
You know what, Taylor?
so hard.
I liked it. You know, I'm having a little bit of a butch phase.
Sweet little butch boy.
Oh, who would have thought? Me? And then I was also like looking at like Glitch Mob. It was all in the same space. It was all in the same space. Yeah. That's kind of where I was at. It's always Megalovania though.
I love that I was just looking at Glitch Mob.
I mean, when are you not?
When are you not? What Taylor? That's a great question. When are we not looking at Glitch Mob?
When are you not looking at Glitch Mob? Yep, chop from the hip.
Well, Tyler, if people want to tell you other ways that you messed up, where can they do that?
Hey everybody, you can find my design illustration work at rudepets.club. As always, you can find me on socials. Rude Pets Club on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter.
Sean, if people want to give you feedback, where can they do that?
Well, they just missed the open period for work, so sorry. It's going to have to wait. But I'm always accepting it on Instagram at TellySean.
And if you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on the socials at TC Olmstead. All of these songs will be on the No Repeat podcast playlist. And we'll be back next week with another episode of No Repeat.